Hey everybody, this is Jason Roggasch, and this was a cool article that I saw the other day on breakfornews.com, and it's from Politico. The gentleman who wrote it, his name is Kevin Cruz, and I'll read just a little bit of it for you, and then I will leave the links below. But basically, it's how corporate America invented the Christian America. How corporations in the 50s got together after the New Deal and created what we know today as the hardcore right-wing, I would go as far as to call them not only the Christian right, but you have the conspiracy right that Alex Jones is a part of, that the Hunt brothers fund, that the Koch brothers fund, many other industrialists, many others from the southern part of the United States and even from the northern part. So let me just read this article, a little bit of this article real quick, and you can check out the other links below. This is a fascinating article, and it shows the pattern that we are currently under with this Christian right-wing nonsense in this country, and that, in fact, it's not because Jesus Christ is is the answer or the reason for the season. It's because there was a lot of billionaires paying for you to believe this nonsense. Not Christianity per se, but to link Christianity and capitalism together. In December 1940, an America was emerging from the Great Depression. More than 5,000 industrialists from across the nation made their yearly pilgrimage to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City, convening for the annual meeting of the National Association of Manufacturers. The program promised an impressive slate of speakers: titans at General Motors, General Electric, Standard Oil, Mutual Life, and Sears and Roebuck. Popular lecturers such as etiquette expert Emily Post and renowned philosopher-historian Will Durant. Even FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Tucked away near the end of the program was a name few knew initially, but one everyone would be talking about by the convention's end: Reverend James W. Fifield. Now, I've never even heard of James Fifield Jr. Never heard of him till today, never heard of him till I read this article. So let's continue. Handsome, tall, and somewhat gangly, the 41-year-old congregational minister bore more than a passing resemblance to Jimmy Stewart. Addressing the crowd of business leaders, Fifield, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, Fifield, Fifield delivered a passionate defense of the American system of free enterprise and a withering assault on its perceived enemies in the FDR administration, decrying the New Deal's encroachment upon our American freedoms. Sound familiar? The minister listed a litany of sins committed by the Democratic government, ranging from its devaluation of currency, sound familiar, to its disrespect for the Supreme Court, singling out the regulatory state for condemnation. He denounced the multitude of federal agencies attached to the executive branch and warned ominously of the menace of autocracy approaching through bureaucracy. Boy, that's a mouthful. It all sounds familiar enough today, doesn't it? But Fifield's audience of executives was stunned. Over the preceding decade, as America first descended into and then crawled its way out of the Great Depression, and these titans of industry had been told time and time again that they were to blame for the nation's downfall. Fifield, in contrast, insisted that they were the source of its salvation. Sound familiar today again with the Republican Party and with Ricky Rubio with all this telling you to deregulate, and it's because of God and Jesus Christ and God and deregulation. A bunch of lying sacks of fucking shit. They just needed to do one thing: get religion. Fifield told the industrialists that clergymen would be crucial in regaining the upper hand in their war with Roosevelt. As men of God, ministers could voice the same conservative complaints as business leaders, but without any suspicions that they were motivated solely by self-interest. They could push back against claims made often by FDR and his allies that businessmen had somehow sinned and that the welfare state was doing God's work. The assembled industrialists gave a rousing amen, and when he had finished, a journalist noted, "Rumors report that the NAM applause could be heard in Hoboken." Yeah. It was a watershed moment, the beginning of a movement that would advance over the 1940s and early 1950s, a new blend of conservative religion, economics, politics, and one observer aptly anointed Christian libertarianism. Now, this was in 1940s after the Great Depression and into the 1950s. Christian libertarianism. You are seeing it now with Ron Paul. They're all bought and fucking paid for. None of this is real. None of this was organic. None of this is grassroots. This is rich businessmen paying politicians, liars, professional liars, to do their bidding, and to do it under the guise of Christianity. What's that old saying about fascism? Fascism will come to the United States carrying a Bible, carrying a Bible and wrapped in a cross or something. Or what was that saying? Carrying a Bible and a cross. That's what these guys are. They're fascists, and they use libertarianism as their guide. This has been going on since the 1940s and 50s. This is my whole channel. This is every fucking thing I talk about. Christianity, capitalism. Okay, so Fifield and the like-minded ministers saw Christianity and capitalism as inextricably intertwined and argued that spreading the gospel of one required spreading the gospel of the other, linking Christianity and capitalism. How evil. The two systems had been linked before, of course, but always in terms of their shared social characteristics. Fifield's innovation was that his insistence that Christianity and capitalism were political soulmates first and foremost, which is completely ridiculous. But then it goes into the prosperity doctrine as well. Before the New Deal, the government had never loomed quite so large over business, and as a result, it had never loomed large in America's thinking about the relationship between Christianity and capitalism. But in Fifield's vision, it now cast a long and ominous shadow. He and his colleagues devoted themselves to fighting the government forces they believed were threatening capitalism and, by extension, Christianity. And their activities helped build a foundation for a new vision of America in which businessmen would no longer suffer under the rule of Roosevelt, but instead thrive, in a phrase they popularized in a nation, under God in many ways. Now, by the way, remember, under God was put on the money when? In the 1950s, during this movement. This is all fake, people. This is all shit. It's all a fucking game to fuck with your mind, to take more money from you and take all your rights away as a worker, and to give you nothing in return. To make a few people rich. Let's see. So America, in which businessmen would no longer suffer the rule of Roosevelt, but instead thrive. In the phrase popularized in a nation under God, in many ways, the marriage of corporate and Christian interest that has recently dominated the news, from the Hobby Lobby case to controversies over state-level versions of Religious Freedom Restoration Act, is not new at all. In fact, it's almost a divide and conquer strategy. It's almost using God against the very people who believe in God. Because if you think that these rich men of power really hold faith that God's going to do something for them, you're nuts. For much of the 1930s, organizations such as the National Association of Manufacturers, NAM, had been searching in vain for ways to rehabilitate a public image that had been destroyed in the Great Depression and defamed by the New Deal. In 1934, a new generation of conservative industrialists took over NAM with a promise to serve the purposes of business salvation. The organization redirected itself into spreading the gospel of free enterprise, vastly expanding its expenditure in the field. As late as 1934, NAM spent a paltry $36,000 on public relations. 3 years later, it devoted $793,000 to the cause. More than half its total income, NAM now promoted capitalism through a wide variety of films, radio programs, advertisements, direct mail, a speakers bureau, and press service that provided ready-made electoral and news stories for 7,500 local newspapers. Jesus Christ. And that was, folks, that's in the 40s. That's in the 30s. 30s into the 40s. Ultimately, though, industry self-promotion was seen as precisely that. Jim Fairley, chairman of the Democratic Party, joked that another group involved in this public relation campaign, the American Liberty League, look that up, really should have been called the American Cellophane League. First, it's a DuPont product, Fairley quipped, and second, you can see right through it. Even President FDR took his shots. It has been said that there are two, this is his quote, it has been said that there are two great commandments. One is to love God and the other to love your neighbor. He noted soon after the Liberty League's creation, the two particular tenets of this new organization say, you shall love God and then forget your neighbor. Wow. Off the record, he joked that the name of the God they worship seemed to be prosperity. Same today. As Roosevelt quips made clear, the president shrewdly used spiritual language, this is the key to this, spiritual language, to political ends. In the judgment of his biographer, James McGregor Burns, probably no American politician, this is McGregor Burns saying this, probably no American politician has given so many speeches that were essentially sermons rather than statements of policy. His first inaugural address was so laden with references to Scripture that the National Bible Press published an extensive chart linking the text with the corresponding biblical quotations. In a memorable passage, Roosevelt reassured the nation that the money changers have fled from their high seats in the temple of our civilization. We may now restore the temple to the ancient truths. It's pretty powerful stuff. Pretty powerful stuff. When Roosevelt launched the New Deal publicly, when he launched the New Deal politically, liberal clergymen echoed his arguments, championing his proposals for a vast welfare state as simply the Christian thing to do. The head of the Federal Council of Churches, for instance, claimed that the New Deal embodied basic Christian principles such as the significance of daily bread, shelter, and security. Quote, when businessmen realized their economic arguments were no match for Roosevelt's religious ones, they decided to beat him at his own game. Now, this article goes on. It's a very, very good article. I mean, excellent. You will enjoy the article. It's a very quick read. Please check it out. The links are below. We'll just finish this up real quick. I'll just finish this up real quick for the next, whatever. That's where Reverend Fifield came in, nicknamed the Apostate of Millionaires by a friendly writer. Fifield took over the elite First Congregational Church in Los Angeles in 1935. The minister was well matched to the millionaires in his pews. Politically conservative but doctrinally liberal, he crafted an interpretation of the Bible that catered to his congregation. Notably, Fifield dismissed the many passages of the New Testament about wealth and poverty and instead assured the elite that their worldly success was a sign of God's blessing. Now, that was 1935, folks. And what they've done is they've created this entire, with Christian bookstores, with making Christianity and other religions, but particularly Christianity is the most dominant in America, so I'm talking about that, tax-free for the government to put in God we trust on the money. That all came because of these morons. That all came, and then they used Christianity and capitalism together. And then they used, which has been around before then, the prosperity doctrine had been around since Kings, but since the time, hundreds of years. But the prosperity doctrine simply states, and it's been reinforced, and it's done by people like from John Hagee to all of those Robert Tilden and all these people, Benny Hinn, who never seem to get in any trouble for any of their scams, and they preach prosperity and capitalism with Christianity. The two are not together. The two shouldn't be together. Religion is, if you're really a Christian, then you should be loving thy neighbor and taking care of each other and blah blah blah. Not, it's all, hey, fuck it, I got my money, you all motherfuckers, you get yours, or you're not good enough, or you're not a Christian, or whatever. So please check out the rest of this article. It gives more detail, and it really shows the genesis of all of this and where we are today with it. This is the Alex Jones crowd. They've just morphed into conspiracy, the gold and silver crowd. Almost all of them are Christian, almost all of them are right-wing, and almost all of them treat God as an ATM machine. And I think that I am an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any kind of creator. But people who do are susceptible to stupidity and are susceptible to being tricked. And I think that you see this with this article, how FDR knew that he could get his agenda pushed by, but his agenda was actually to take care of people. You may not like FDR because you've been convinced that the New Deal was bad for you if you're a working class person, but in fact, it was the best thing that had ever happened to working class people. It was the best thing. It gave us Social Security. It gave us an ability to get a check every month if you can't find employment, or if you really, from the federal government and with the state's government's help. Medicare, Medicaid, many other things came in from the New Deal. And the 40-hour work week, in large part, a lot of the labor stuff that we have today. So when you think about FDR and what he did, you may not like the New Deal, but it's only because you've been convinced by rich, millionaire, fake Christian assholes to vote against your best interest. Go check out the book, What's Wrong? What's the Matter with Kansas? And a good book, and it's why people vote against their self-interest. Here's one more piece of evidence why people vote against their self-interest. Thank you for listening, and please check out this article. Have a great day.